Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Q&A. It's a day early because I'm going to too many games tomorrow, so sorry if I missed any questions that come in late. Please re-ask them next week, but let's jump right in. First up, RetroTech asked if I have any recommendations for oscilloscopes and if there's any to avoid. So the only ones that I would avoid are really old used ones because you're probably going to have them calibrated anyway. Unless, of course, you have a way to calibrate them, you know somebody that knows how to do all that stuff. But my recommendation is usually just to get the same scope that everybody in the Retro Roundtable uses and a lot of our friends use for measurements. And that's the one I got sitting next to me, the Rigel DS1054Z. Just go to the page retrorgb.com/oscilloscopes.html, and the links for what you need are right there. And it's an easy scope to use. All the videos I've been doing on it all the scope videos I've been doing are on this one, and it's cheap. It's $350. So, it's just one of those things where you could probably find a used one for cheaper that'll be totally fine for your purposes, but I like to use this one. And for me, I didn't want to trust a used scope. I've obviously been publishing all of my findings, and I would really feel bad if I was off by a few millivolts or more because my scope wasn't calibrated properly. So I just thought a brand new one was the way to go. You could buy the Owan scope. I think it's also listed on that page if you're looking for a more budget one. So I think it's $100 shipped, comes with the probes and everything. And that's definitely good enough for measuring video signals. You just got to use it with a laptop instead of having a standalone thing. But definitely check that page out. It should have everything that you would need to at least point you in the right direction. And about the CRT rejuvenators, so the only experience I have is with a few broken monitors, and you could use them for measurements, but I don't generally recommend people use them unless their CRT is really about to die. So plugging it in and measuring it, totally safe, I think, I'm 99% sure. But for example, we had a BVM that the tube was doing some weird stuff. And it was one of these things where we could spend a lot of time and a lot of money doing a recap, calibrating it, just to find out it's going to die in 6 months to a year. Or we could run the CRT rejuvenator, see if that fixes it or if that kills it. And I made the call to run it. Luckily, the person whose monitor it was agreed with me, and it killed the tube. So in that scenario, we have something that was, a shell of something that needed full restoration, needed all of the boards redone, everything about it was old and beat up. So I just thought that before taking the chance and the time and the money to doing all that, let's see how bad the tube really is. And when it died, it was validation for me, like, all right, I'm really glad we didn't spend all of this time. Let's pull it apart for parts, use it to refurbish other ones with good tubes. Now, the other way to look at that is you could say that I ruined a tube that might have had 6 months to a year more life on it. Really depends on your situation. So, things like consumer grade TVs, you get a lot of 10 of them. You start doing some scans and you see they're off. Yeah, I'd do that on every one that was off that you felt like it needed it. Sure, why not? Give it a try, and if you kill it off, that was a lot of time to spend for something that might not work. But as a general rule for this stuff, I would never run them unless you were prepared to kill the tube. The situation I described, I'm totally pleased with the results. It saved me a ton of money and, more importantly, time. I mean, that's over a weekend's worth of work. So just be careful with them. And they're a pretty handy tool to have. And a buddy of mine uses his all the time for testing. So I think the only time he's ever run it is with me that one time just as a test. But every time he gets a new tube, he'll look it up to make sure that it's a decent tube and kind of bases how much time he wants to spend on it off of those readings. So it's a good tool to have. Kenny Rydell responded to Manti Zero's post from last week about having something like an Xband but for other consoles, and said he's working on that exact same thing for the Mister. He said he hasn't released anything yet because it's very much a work in progress, but it seems like it's got potential. So that's pretty neat. I normally wouldn't out somebody for this, but Kenny posted right here on the video, so I guess it's public technically, but that's pretty neat. And if you need beta testers for that, I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this would be willing to help and have the experience of being a beta tester, so they'll know what to expect. But that's pretty cool. Please keep everybody updated in your progress. Nathan Kimball posted in regards to his experience using the new library platform, and I guess he had a pretty negative experience. And I've heard both. A few people said that their experience was negative. I actually had a lot of people email or contact me saying that it was exactly what they were looking for, perfect, this is exactly what I need in the future. And I just think that anybody who uses it now needs to realize you're an early adopter of a platform that's still trying to find its own, both in its user interface, the back-end stuff. So I guess you'd have to be a little bit patient with it. For myself personally, the two reasons I'm supporting it and using it: for the long term, I see the big picture and I see what this has, the potential of what it could be. And I'll talk more about that at a different time. I want to make sure that I'm right in my thinking and kind of start on a new project around that. But for the short term, it's the quality. That's exactly why I'm really happy to use it, because I take my time now. I didn't always do this, but I take my time to, every video, including this one, gets rendered uncompressed, and then I recompress it with Handbrake, which accomplishes two things. One is that the file is significantly smaller, but even though it's smaller, it's actually way better quality than using Premiere's compression. So when I launched the Mega SD video this morning, I had a few people commenting about my capture settings or the choppy video or something, and it's funny because what they were actually commenting on was what YouTube and their compression algorithm does to the video. So now I have the luxury of saying, just watch it on library then. Watch the same part and see if the errors are still there. Now the video is not perfect. I don't have the time to make things perfect these days, and it's the 80-20 rule. I could have added another 10 to 15 hours to that video to make video captures 1% better, and a video that video capture was not the focus. So I just said whatever, I'll leave the blips in there. And but point is, you could very clearly see the quality difference when you watch it on either, you could watch it streamed on library through a browser, or you could use the app and download the original file. So the same file that I upload, the properly compressed, well-rendered file, you could just download that and watch it yourself if you want it, all as part of the platform. So, it might not be for you right now, it might not be for you ever, but I'm still wholeheartedly supporting it. And I hope that it'll grow in the way that I see it growing into. But if not, at least for the short term, I have a way to share my videos in the highest reasonable quality possible, just at a click of a button. So I'm sticking with it, and I hope your experience gets better. Firebrand X, busting my chops over semantics as usual. You wanted to nitpick about when I say the subcarrier pin, lifting the subcarrier pin on a Model 1 Genesis to reduce the jail bars doesn't disable composite video, it turns it into a Luma signal by removing the color information. Well, it still means composite video doesn't work, doesn't it? Yes, he's completely right, and I gotta remember that even in the Q&As I am talking to my fellow nerds, so that is 100% true, but it does accomplish the same thing in that when you lift it, it removes the color info, which removes all of the interference that cause jail bars. And of course, still means that you're not going to be able to use composite video because there's no color information going to it. But yep, good job with the semantics. Sam McGee asked about proper aspect ratio from a PS2 to a flat screen TV. And I'll answer the question first and then go back and address some of the other stuff. At the moment, I believe an OSSC or a FrameMeister would be able to manipulate the image to be a little bit more proper for you. If your TV is compatible with the OSSC, that's going to be the better choice, and that's always a gamble, of course. You won't really know for sure until you plug your OSSC into it. But overall, I think you'd be able to manipulate it in a way where you could get the proper aspect ratio and the best quality today out of it. You mentioned using component video, which is fine. Just definitely get good component video cables. In fact, all of the speculation over the years that PS2 outputted bad quality component video came down to factors that had nothing to do with the PS2 itself. And one big factor was people using cheap cables. So I recommend the HD RetroVision ones. I think they're try Castlemania Games or Amazon, but they should be available from either one. And, HD RetroVision PS2 cables into an OSSC, into your flat screen, with some tweaking, will probably get you the best image you can get today from a PS2 on a flat screen. You did mention a thread on Reddit where Christoph talks about possibly the PS2 has the same issue as the Dreamcast, where TVs would misinterpret the resolution. I don't know. I never really looked into that. And while I finally have a grasp of what that is, I still I'm not comfortable or confident enough in my ability to explain that. So I guess I'll wait for a different time to talk about that. Maybe I could. That's something I would like to write out as a script rather than try to do off the cuff, because it is a bit confusing. And at the end of the day, if it is something like a true misinterpretation of the signal, having an internal HDMI digital to digital mod would be the best way and the most accurate way to solve that issue. But you can get pretty close with a Dreamcast and an OSSC. So I think you'd probably be close as well with the PS2 if that's the issue. So just check the Firebrand X page. I think he might have a profile for it, and if not, I'm sure it's something that we could all work on and get sorted out reasonably soon. Conrad Klaus wanted to know if I had any more previews of the Mega SD, but the video aired this morning, so you should be able to have all the info you need on that, or at least all the info I have to offer at the moment. But you did mention being nervous about another Terra Onion product. So there's no video output in this, so that's not an issue at all, and the audio output's perfectly fine. I don't have any complaints in its current form at all, but there is room for tweaking. I don't know if I would use the word improvement, but there's room for tweaking. So turn a filter on or off, change the FM sound and the way the instruments are generated. There's a few things that you could do, FM sound for Master System, sorry. But there's a few things that they probably would update in the future with firmware updates. So I barely even mentioned it in the video because it was kind of a moot point. I'm not going to argue about firmware that's day one release where you could have a million of these tweaks and options in a month. So I'm happy with it as is. I'd always like to see choices and feature toggles and stuff like that. But I think they're pretty confident in standing by this one. So I totally think it's safe to order now. You still do need to register the device, so the firmware is still locked to the serial number. And I do understand why they do that, and I do understand I understand the concepts of how they would need to change it, and I just think that their stance is, this is how we do it, and this is how we're going to do it. And that's fine, that's their decision. I would always prefer to have something like unlocked firmware and lock it down in a bootloader and something else. But, it's their choice, and it's not the wrong way to do it. It's just one of the ways that you could do it. And, whatever, it's their company and their choice, and, it doesn't affect the operation of the cart. It just, it stinks that you can't just get global updates like that. But whatever. Anyway, check out the video. Please let me know what you think, and I'm very happy with it. I really did legit buy one for me and got one for Scott because I owed him one anyway. Cedric Parent wants to know if I knew of any GameCube optical drive emulator in development. I do not. I know, Phil Welker wanted to follow up about heat testing and the N64 overclock and wanted to know what temperature probe I would recommend to measure the heat. I bought cheap kits online. They're like $100, I think. Actually, I think some are cheaper. But that's what I've used, and I believe all the kits that we used when I went to an actual thermal chamber out in Taiwan where they do like the real testing and they put it, like imagine like an oven but with thermal sensors all around it, and it matched up within a degree. So I think something like the digital temperature sensor has been around for so long that you can get, when I say cheaper, it's still around $100, but you can just get a kit that has all of the probes and everything right there. And just make sure that you affix it to each of the parts properly. So one of the things I would do is put thermal paste between the probe and whatever metal I was doing to get actual measurements of the heat sink. And then of course I had ambient ones all around. And number them, label them, just all basics for any testing. But it's one of those things where it's kind of fun and kind of neat if you're into weird stuff like that. So if you think that you might be able to use it on anything else besides the N64 as well, buy the kit and give it a shot. But if it's really just for this mod, I don't know, ask yourself if you want to spend all that money on this for just one test. If it's important to you, hell yeah, but sometimes I go a little bit overboard and get a little too much test equipment, and then now I have boxes worth of, or filled with stuff that I've used once and never again. Well, that's it for this week. If I missed your question, it's probably because it came in right after I was done shooting the video, so please re-ask it again next week. Once again, I just had to do this a day early because I'm going to too many games tomorrow. And also, for anybody new to the Q&As, please post any question you have just in the latest Q&A video, wherever it is that you've signed up for a support platform. It's not really possible for me to go back and sort through all of the older videos, so any question you have, just find the latest Q&A video on the support platform and post it there. And while these do go public about a month later, it really is just a direct thank you to all the supporters. So I turn off the comments on YouTube and really just stick to the support platforms themselves. So as always, thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.